What's up, everybody? I'm Mckenty. This is my second channel, and this is your home for my Twitch highlights and my podcast. So if you like this and you want to see more of that and you want to join the live streams, there's a link to that in the description of this video. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. What I want to talk about first was this. You've probably seen something about this. If you haven't, I'll catch you up. Adele got Spotify to remove the shuffle button from album pages. BBC News reports Spotify has removed the shuffle button from all album pages after Adele pressed the company to make the change in sync with the launch of her album 30. Albums should be listened to as artists intended as they tell a story, the singer explained in a follow-up on Twitter. You can still shuffle an album using the controls for individual songs. This mainly adds an extra step and pushes you to choose a first track. Rivals like Apple Music still let you tap a shuffle button from an album page. So this is what happened on Twitter. She explains, "This was the only request I had in our ever-changing industry. We don't create albums with so much care and thought into our track listing for no reason. Our art tells a story, and our story should be listened to as we intended. Thank you, Spotify, for listening." And they replied, "Anything for you," praying hands and sparkly emoji. I found this incredibly irritating, and I'll tell you why. Let me just ask a couple questions. I think there's a couple ways that you can look at it. The first question is basically from a creative standpoint. How much does the artist's intent matter when you are consuming the art? In other words, like, the artist may have something in mind as far as the experience that they would like you to have when you consume their art. To what extent are you obligated, or are any of us, including companies like Spotify, obligated to respect that? The reason I find this irritating is because I think musicians are very self-centered. Musicians all think that they and their art are the most important thing in the universe. And to be clear, I actually like Adele a lot. I think she's incredibly talented. She seems like a cool person. I'm an Adele fan. That said, this just feels like your classic case of musician entitlement syndrome to me, or main character syndrome, where she thinks that her album is so important that it has to be consumed in exactly the way that she wants. And you hear this from artists all the time. I remember reading an interview with the Beastie Boys years ago where they said, you know, the way that you should listen to their album is to get it on vinyl and then sit down in your room with nobody else around and listen to it on headphones while you're reading the lyrics and looking at the liner notes and just totally immerse yourself in the album. And that's what they want. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, all creators, all artists of any kind want our art to be the center of your world, right? But that's not how it works. So the idea that because Adele had something in mind for the track listing of her album and that she had this story in her head, and that because of that, not only should you, the listener, consume it in the way that she wanted, but the Spotify should change their product in order to accommodate her vision. This is like so entitled to me. You've heard, like, who was it? Was it Martin Scorsese is mad about people watching movies on their phone? You know, there's authors that say that reading an ebook on your Kindle isn't as good as the paperback, and blah, blah, blah. And I get it. You know, like, they're probably right. I'm sure that it is best in a perfect world. That is the way you would consume their art. But guess what? I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't necessarily even want to listen to your whole album. Maybe I just want to listen to one song. Who are you to tell me how to listen to it? Especially if since I am the customer. I am paying for it by subscribing to Spotify or listening to ads or buying the album or whatever. Like, I think an artist can and should put their opinion out there about how they see things. Like, just so you know, here's the reason why I put the tracks in the order that I did. Like, if you care about that, then, you know, listen to it from start to finish. But the idea that, like, somehow she's been done wrong if Spotify and everyone else doesn't sort of cater to her artistic intent, to me, is like, it's nonsense. It's silly. It's like very, very arrogant. And I get it from her perspective, because it stings when you realize that people may not care about your art as much as you do. I've felt this myself. For example, a lot of people have told me that they don't watch my videos, they just listen to them. I see it in their comments. They're like, "Oh, your video was great. I listened to it while I was folding my laundry." And my initial reaction to that was I got butthurt, because I was like, oh, well, I put all this effort into the edits. If all you're doing is listening, then you're missing so much from my video. At first I got butthurt, and then I was like, well, you know what? I listen to a lot of videos too. It's not that I think the video is bad. It's just like, I have other things going on in my life. I'm not necessarily going to sit down and devote all my attention to any creator's video when it comes out. I might just listen to it while I'm making my breakfast or something. And the same is true of music. You got to think Adele is super popular. I get it. And like I said, I think she's a fantastic musician, but she is not the center of the world. People have other shit going on. They're in the car, they're at the gym, maybe they're just listening to it while they make dinner or whatever it is. Like, the idea that you should sort of fall in line with her vision for how she ordered the track listing on this album is silly to me. And second, I don't know that she even believes that this is true really in her heart, because if she did, she wouldn't put it on streaming at all. She wouldn't release singles. She wouldn't put them on playlists. I mean, she's accepted that it's okay to listen to this out of sequence in some circumstances by putting out playlists and singles and stuff like that. I think it's entirely valid for artists to share their vision for how to consume their work. And by all means, they should do it. And if fans want to consume it in that way, I think that's great. Like, it's totally cool. For example, there's certain movies, like if there's a new James Bond movie, speaking of Adele, because she did the song for one of them. If there's a new James Bond movie, I would prefer to go see that in the theater because, it's like an immersive experience. That's something that I'm willing to go give my full attention to. But I'm not going to consume every movie that way. Like, I don't really give a shit what Martin Scorsese says. Maybe I'm just going to watch it on my phone while I'm on the treadmill at the gym. Does that make me a bad consumer? I don't know. I think artists just need to understand that when you release your work out there, people are going to consume it however they want to consume it. You have no control over that. You shouldn't expect to have control over it. It doesn't mean that the audience is in the wrong for consuming it in the way that they want. In fact, I would say as a creator, like, I'm excited for people to consume it in the way that feels right to them. Like, I have chapters in my videos. If you want to watch the chapters out of order, if you want to just skip to the third chapter in my video because that's the one you really care about, do it. As a creator, you got to let go of your ego. You can't expect people to consume things in the exact way that you put them out there, right? Creators are not the center of the world. We're not the center of the universe. You can't expect people to care as much about your work as you do. That's what I think. Yeah, exactly. From the chat here, does this mean she's going to tour exclusively playing her albums front to back the way it was intended? No, of course she's not going to. And that's the reason why this is basically posturing on her part. The other thing that kind of gets my goat about this is that I really think people need to get out of this album mindset. For one, because the album was never intended as a piece of art in the first place. Oh, hey, Herman Lee's showing up. Herman, welcome, Raiders. The reason that albums became a thing, if you step back to like the 50s when recorded music started to be kind of an industry in the way that we think of it now, the single was the default. People would put out singles and then they would collect those singles on an album, essentially a greatest hits, as a way to sell music again. And, that's not good or bad. I'm just saying it is what it is. Then, of course, people started to use the album as an art form, in like the 60s and 70s. They would start by recording an album. And they would, of course, think about track sequencing and things like concept albums came to be a thing and blah, blah, blah. And that, I think, is when the idea of the album as sort of the canonical format for recorded music started to be a thing. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Like, I think that there is certainly something to be said for thinking of an album as one piece of art and the track sequencing and all that. But on the other hand, once that person has bought the album, they can do whatever the fuck they want. If they want to remix it onto a tape in whatever order they want, they can do that. And you can't be upset about it. So I think that artists, especially in rock, because I think pop and rap have largely accepted that we live in a singles first world, a playlist first world, or even a TikTok first world. Adele has also said she basically doesn't care about TikTok and won't do any TikTok marketing. If she doesn't want to, like, that's cool. She's super fucking rich. She can basically do whatever she wants because she's Adele. I worry that people will see Adele pushing back on playlists and shuffle and pushing back on TikTok, and that they'll think that they should do that. This is the same thing as Taylor Swift. Well, Taylor Swift re-recorded all her shit, so I can do it too. Well, no. What works for Adele does not work for you because you're not Adele. I just think, especially in rock, we've got to get out of this fucking fixation with albums. It makes no sense anymore from a creative standpoint. because that's just not how people consume things. It just isn't. I understand that like the hardcore fans do, but that's just not how people consume music these days. And you got to get out of that mindset. This entitlement that artists have where they get butthurt if people don't consume their work in exactly the way that they would like you to consume it, I find annoying. So that's the first way to look at this. The second way to look at it is from a business standpoint. The question is, what should Spotify or any other company do when their big creators decide that they want to request feature changes? You've got to push back on this. Like, Spotify cannot let Adele or any other creator bully them and become their product manager. So in a company like Spotify, there is a person named the product manager, and there's lots of product managers at Spotify, but the person who is in charge of deciding what features should be designed and built and when and why is called the product manager. And this person is accountable for certain results like user growth and retention and revenue and blah, blah, blah. And then that person builds a thing called a product roadmap against that. So the business decides we need to grow by 30% next year, and the product manager says, all right, well, with that in mind, here's the features we want to build and why. And that's driven by the business, because Spotify's responsibility is to run a business. Because they're a publicly held company. You may have shares of Spotify. You don't want Adele fucking with this company that is publicly traded. She doesn't give a shit about the company. She doesn't care about the business. All she cares about is her art and her album. And I get it. That's totally fine. But Spotify can't have these artists coming along and deciding to play product manager. Now, I will say, the thing that Adele was specifically upset about was that the default state when you go to an album is to play it on shuffle, which I think is weird and makes no sense. So I think it was a bad design decision on that part, on their part, or at least it seems like it. But if you start taking feature requests from artists, this is a terrible, 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 terrible idea. Artists don't understand how to run a product. They don't understand how to run a technology company. Letting them steer the ship is a bad idea. So Adele happens to be on top right now. What if next week it's Drake? And Drake is like, I don't like the way you display cover art because I really like my cover art. I think cover art should be bigger. And then you're like, oh, all right, no problem, Drizzy. We'll add that to the product roadmap right now. And then next week it's Justin Bieber and he wants you to change the color of the logo. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna let these fucking artists just like dictate your product roadmap and run your business for you? You can't do that. They've gotta basically just respectfully tell them to fuck off. Like, if you ever worked at a technology company, everybody's got an idea. What you do is you tell everyone, here's a link to Jira. Please feel free to file a ticket with a feature request, and we'll take a look at it. And then you fucking ignore it because everyone has a feature request and none of them understand the business, and you basically just need to politely tell them to fuck off. This is the same thing that they need to do to artists, because with all due respect to Adele, again, I am a fan. I think she's awesome. I love her music, but she does not understand how to run a business. And you got to just politely tell these people to fuck off, just like they have to tell all their employees to fuck off too, that want them to remove content, blah, 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 take this podcast episode down because we don't like it. You have to tell those employees to fuck off because they also don't understand how to run a business necessarily. Here's the thing. If you let artists decide how to run your company, every single one of them will want you to do things that highlight their music and only their music. If you let musicians run your company, they're going to be like, force everyone to hold the phone 1 inch from their face and inject my music directly into their brain because I am the most important person in the world, because I'm an artist. Allowing artists to steer the ship and dictate the product roadmap is a fucking horrible, horrible idea. Trust me, Spotify, do not do this. Do not let artists drive your product roadmap. This is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. I assure you. What do you all think in the chat? Spotify's like a genie and Adele used her wish on this. Could have gotten the local metal bands a living wage. That's right. Spotify should pay every metal band $100 a day because metal is the best genre in the world. And every musician should make a living wage, right? Even if we only put out 1 tape a year and play 4 shows and don't even have a social media account, we should make a living wage, right? My fans can only listen to my music from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. PST. Exactly. This is a great point from the chat. If the album's strong enough, people will listen through it in order anyway. Exactly. The people who care about this, which is not many people, because most people don't give a shit about, track order and all that kind of stuff. The people who care about it will consume it that way anyway. So dictating product decisions, like design decisions, is a weak way of forcing people to do this. Yes, Ant is right. People who want to shuffle are going to shuffle anyway. To be fair, people are talking about it. Thin Adele pulled a huge marketing stunt here. I don't think Adele is doing this for a marketing stunt. There's a lot better ways of generating PR impressions than this. If Adele refuses to be on TikTok, I'm pretty sure that she is not doing this as a marketing stunt. I think she's a purist, which is fine. In my opinion, the default setting didn't make sense and was right to be scrutinized, but the knee-jerk, OMG, thank you, Adele, for saving us reaction is gnarly. I think, yeah, that's pretty much exactly how I feel. The default shuffle seems like a stupid thing because, why would anyone who clicks on an album want it to be shuffled? So I think that's stupid, but yeah, that sort of, oh my gosh, thank you for saving us thing is dumb. As much as I like Adele and her music, I think artists need to adapt to the way things are now. Most people don't listen to whole albums nowadays, and this is something artists need to understand. Exactly. And by all means, tell people how you would like them to listen to it. By all means, do that. You just can't expect people to do it. When I was a kid listening to CDs, I'd listen to them in whatever order I wanted. I had to manually change the track after each song, and I did because I didn't want to listen in order. That's right. We walked to school uphill both ways in the snow, shuffling our Discman manually, god damn it, and it was good enough for us. This is kind of a Karen move from her, actually. Adele drove to Spotify and said, I want to talk to the manager. I mean, she kind of did, right? That is kind of what happened. Once it's out there, it's up to the fans to choose how they consume the music. And if they want to go straight to track 6, don't tell them they need to go through 1 through 5 first. I agree. I mean, that's just the way it is. Again, I would love it if everyone sat down and watched my videos in a dark room with fucking candles and incense out and say a prayer beforehand, asking God to give me more views on this one and take notes and treat my video like it's the most important thing in the world. I would love that. But that's just not how people watch my videos, and I just have to kind of live with that. I'm just grateful that people pay attention to my shit at all. I guess that's the other thing. It's it just feels kind of entitled to me. I'm grateful anybody gives a fuck about me at all. Being picky about how they consume my stuff is, I don't know. That's weird to me.